Welcome to Mickey, Marvel, and More, Disney news, commentary, and opinion. From theme parks to Thanos and from Skywalker to Skyliner, my family and I will discuss it all. So let's go!
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
Hello, Mark here, and welcome to another episode of Mickey, Marvel, and More. Thanks so much for dropping by and joining us for another jam-packed episode. If you're new here, welcome. Grab a chair and slide it up to the virtual table and join us for some talk about all things Disney. In this episode's family chat, Laura and I are going to launch a new segment called Park Bites. In these new Park Bite segments, we're going to pick a Disney theme park and we're going to tell you which quick service and sit-down dining locations you should visit and which ones you should avoid. This episode, Laura and I are going to take a bite out of Disney's Hollywood Studios. Hey, you see what I did there? That's right, it's time to get the writer a raise. But first, let's have a little news from in and around the Disneyverse.
Hello there.
First up today is a follow-up to a story we brought you a few episodes ago about the cancellation of the Star Wars Disney Plus show, The Acolyte. So not only were the viewing numbers very low after the first two episodes, but it's recently been revealed that The Acolyte came in well over its projected budget, with the cost hitting an estimated $230.1 million when it was only part of the way through post-production. Or should I say, 172 million pounds. Why do I say pounds? Well, movie and TV studios film in the UK to benefit from the government's audiovisual expenditure credit, which gives them a cash reimbursement of up to 25.5% of the money they spend in the country. To qualify for the reimbursement, at least 10% of the core production costs need to be related to activities in the UK. In order to show this commitment to the government, studios tend to set up separate production companies in the UK for each show they make there. And each one has to file financial statements which reveal precisely how much money was spent on the production. And of course, all of these documents are public record. So it was through these documents that it was revealed just how over budget The Acolyte actually was. Budgets of television shows are usually a pretty closely guarded secret, and studios tend to absorb the cost of individual shows in their overall expense budget. Therefore, most of the time, we don't know how much a television show costs unless they tell us. While not the most expensive Star Wars project ever, that award goes to Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens, and that film may go down as the most expensive film in history. But that's a story for another podcast. But The Acolyte may go down as the most expensive Star Wars television program ever. So with the revelation of this news, I think it's pretty clear why The Acolyte was canceled. Like I said before, I hope Disney and Lucasfilm explore this era in the Star Wars universe sometime again in the future, because I think a lot of good stories could be told in this time period.
Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to exit the donut.
During San Diego Comic-Con this year, Marvel premiered the trailer for the new film, The Thunderbolts. And for whatever reason, Disney and Marvel decided that this was going to be a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive, and they weren't going to release it online at the same time. There have been a few pirated copies floating around the internet since the con, but they're low res and the audio is horrible. However, this week, Disney and Marvel finally officially released the trailer online, and it looks really good. It looks like it's going to be fun and action-packed. Let's just hope that it was also well written. For those unfamiliar with the Thunderbolts, essentially they are Marvel's answer to DC's Suicide Squad. And for those that don't know who the Suicide Squad is, basically it's a group of anti-heroes that are brought in to do jobs that the main heroes can't or won't do. According to the trailer, it looks like the team will be made up of Yelena Belova, Black Widow's sister, Red Guardian, their father, another character we're familiar with, Bucky Barnes, Ghost, Taskmaster, U.S. Agent, and Bob. Who is Bob, you might ask? Well, people have been speculating that it's Bob Reynolds, otherwise known as the Sentry, one of Marvel Comics' most powerful characters of all time. So it looks like the Thunderbolts is preparing to unleash a character that will have a pretty big impact on the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole. It'll be interesting to see where this one goes. Take a look at the trailer in the show notes and see what you think. And let's keep our fingers crossed that this is another Marvel home run.
Seabase outlet to surface control. All hydrolators pressurized. Prepare for boarding.
10-4 Seabase. Hydrolators now boarding for departure to Visitor Center at sublevel 5.
And finally, we have a follow-up to a story we brought you in the last episode. In episode 16, we told you that Disney World had announced they were relocating all of the dolphins and one of the manatees from the Seas with Nemo and Friends Pavilion. Well, Lou the manatee was relocated this week, but as promised, Disney brought in a new manatee so Lil Joe wouldn't be so lonely. To be fair, Lil Joe isn't so lol. He clocks in at over 1,900 pounds and is about 34 years old. Lil Joe's new friend is Inigo. Inigo was found a couple of years ago, malnourished and underweight, and he currently has buoyancy issues. Poor guy. Inigo recently lived at the Jacksonville Zoo and SeaWorld before residing at the Seas. He was briefly released after his first rehabilitation, but the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission determined that he was better off in human care. Both Lil Joe and Inigo seem to be getting along well, and I'm pretty sure they'll become great friends. So the next time you visit the Seas with Nemo and Friends at Epcot, be sure to check them both out, as well as all the rest of our animal friends that inhabit the 5.7 million gallon aquarium inside the pavilion. Be sure to stay tuned to Mickey, Marvel, and more for all of the tiny and tiny adjacent animal news out of the Disney theme parks.
Oh, wait a second, please don't go.
4 combos, extra bacon on the side, 2 chili cheese samplers, a basket of liver and onion rings, a catch of the day, and a steak cut in the shape of a trout. You got all that, honey?
3 oinkers wearing pants, plate of hot air, basket of grandma's breakfast, and change the bull to a gill. Got it.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Family Chat. We have an awful lot to talk about today, so we're going to get right to it. And I'm going to bring in my wife, Laura, to introduce a brand new segment on our Family Chat. Laura, welcome back to the show.
Excited to be here.
Okay, so as big, huge Disney fans and people that travel to the Disney parks quite often, people will always ask us for advice. And the big 3 questions we get are where to stay, what kind of tickets to get, and
where to eat.
That's right. So we decided to start a brand new segment on the show called Park Bites.
Oh, boy.
I think that's going to be fantastic.
I haven't heard that introduction before. That's pretty perfect. So on Park Bites, each time we cover that in an episode, we're going to focus on one park. And in that park, we will cover our top sit-down restaurants, our top counter service restaurants, but then we'll also talk about the counter service restaurants and sit-down restaurants that we think are the worst.
Yeah, that's going to be we're going to see what kind of debates we get into here. So we're going to start today's discussion with Disney's Hollywood Studios, and we're going to cover the worst counter service places first. All right, my number 2 worst counter service place is Sunset Ranch Market on Sunset Boulevard. Now, that's the outdoor area that has Anaheim Produce, Rosie's All-American Cafe, Catalina Eddie's, and Fairfax Fair. I don't really have much trouble with like the ice cream place and the place where you can get mixed drinks and juices and drinks, but I'm talking about the food locations like the All-American Cafe and Catalina Eddie's. Basically, it's just burgers and really bad theme park pizza and salads. I think that the fact that you're eating outside and it's usually hot and you're eating the most generic theme park fare possible, I just feel like if you're going to have the generic theme park fare, there are better locations to have it at Disney's Hollywood Studios where you don't have to sit outside.
So I partially agree with you and partially disagree with you on this one. So I will say as a given, across the board, any outdoor location is not suitable for eating in hot weather months.
Sure.
There is just no reason on earth to ever sit at an outdoor restaurant in Florida in the blazing hot sun and humidity in
Right.
any weather. So all of these are with the caveat of if it is an outdoor location, I grant you it is never appropriate to eat there when it's hot.
Fair.
But assuming good weather, I actually think this is not one of the worst locations to eat.
Okay.
Now, I will grant you, and
It's
I will...
pretty generic food,
yes,
though.
I will agree with you that Rosie's All-American and Catalina Eddie's are very basic foods.
Mm-hmm.
However, Fairfax Fare usually has a rotating menu.
Okay.
And depending on what it is that they're offering, sometimes that food can be pretty interesting. So right now, for example, on their menu, they have bowls. They have, I think, a Korean barbecue bowl. They maybe have a pork belly bowl.
Are these like rice bowls?
I think it's
Okay.
some kind of mix and match sort of stuff. So you've got a base, you've got a protein, and then you may have some kind of a vegetable. You have a sauce. So I think that's actually pretty interesting. And as far as outdoor eating locations go, I actually think that is a fairly nice area when the weather is nice to sit and eat. You are within view of the Tower of Terror, the Hollywood Tower of Terror. There's usually a lot of interesting things going on in Sunset Boulevard. There are nice little tables there with nice shade. They usually have fans. So I think as outdoor eating locations go, it is not the worst.
Okay. Well, I disagree somewhat with you there. I do think that the place you mentioned that served the bowls sounds interesting, but in general, it's just such basic theme park food. And you couple that with eating outside, there are way better ways to get a hamburger.
I hear you.
Okay. So what is your number 2 worst location?
My number 2 is going to be controversial and unpopular in the Disney community.
All right.
I would say, I would posit to you that the second worst counter service restaurant in Disney's Hollywood Studios is actually Woody's Lunchbox.
Okay. Wow. What is your reasoning for that?
Okay. So also an outdoor eating location.
Yes.
However, I think the outdoor eating location is worse than Sunset Ranch Market because number one, it's small. And it is too small for the number of people that eat at Woody's Lunchbox. Despite all of its flaws, it's a very popular location.
Right. Well, it's the only place to eat over in Toy Story Land.
Right. It's the only counter service restaurant over there. But there's no place to sit and eat. On the couple of occasions that we have eaten there, we both times have had to wait for a table.
Mm-hmm.
And and there's really no other place to sit and eat your food. There's just a general lack of seating, I think, in Toy Story Land.
And shade.
That's the other thing. Sunset Ranch Market at least has awnings, fans, and there are umbrellas at some of the picnic tables. This place has zero shade, except for they may have a few picnic tables with umbrellas.
They do.
But generally speaking, there is no shade from any surrounding structures or locations, so it seems hotter and more direct in the sun.
There is no shade in Toy Story Land. No trees.
I'm also going to dig on their menu.
Okay.
People, again, seems to be very popular. I'm not exactly sure.
People love that Pop-Tart thing.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
I don't get it either. So I think it's very popular for their rotating tart selection. So it's different
flavors. So maybe dessert, but
flavors.
not lunch or dinner.
Possibly, but every time I go, I see people eating there. So I
Okay.
don't know. But the highlight of their menu, and I think they only have maybe 6 things on their menu.
They do. I think they've got grilled cheese and soup too.
Exactly. Grilled cheese and tomato soup.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from maybe a couple of months of the year where it might be comfortable to sit outside and eat tomato soup.
Hot soup in Florida.
Exactly. And a hot grilled cheese sandwich. Generally speaking, that is not the kind of food I'm looking for when I'm going to be seated at an outdoor location, again, except for maybe a couple of months of the year. So for me, I think Woody's Lunchbox is my second worst counter service location in Disney's Hollywood Studios because I think they have an inappropriate menu and an inappropriate outdoor seating area.
Now, to be fair, at the time of this recording, they have recently completely dug up where the seating was and the seating has been shifted to, I think, the passageway between Toy Story Land and Galaxy's Edge. They've got some temporary tables set up over there. So I don't know if they're going to be doing some improvements on the seating and eating area, which is possible, but that's still not going to change the fact that the menu is not great.
Yeah, the rumor is that they're upgrading the seating there, and so who knows? With upgraded seating, that may change my mind.
Yeah.
And with a couple of menu adjustments, that may change my mind as well. But for now, that's my pick for second worst.
All right, so we disagree, but we sort of agree on some of the points on that one. All right, so I think this one is across the board an agreement.
Yes.
The number one worst counter service location in Disney Hollywood Studios, Pizza Rizzo's over by Muppet Vision.
Yep.
It is the absolute worst of all theme park pizzas.
Yes.
I don't know if I can say anything positive about this place except for the fact it shaded us from the rain a couple of times when we waited outside as the deluge fell from the sky.
It is very generic theme park pizza.
And it's not even like close to being good.
It's not. And the location itself, the eating area, is not particularly interesting. It's just kind of a big warehouse, I think.
They don't even have an arcade in there anymore, do they?
No, they used to have an arcade, which was at least a little bit.
When it was Pizza Planet.
Yeah. It is not even good theme park pizza. I don't even think it is Fazoli's quality.
I agree.
And the inside of the restaurant smells like a Fazoli's, which also doesn't do it any favors.
Very garlicky, very saucy.
Yeah, it doesn't do it any favors.
All right, so that is the worst counter service location. So let's flip the coin here. The best counter service locations in Disney Hollywood Studios. Now, I think we have a disagreement here, but my number 2 for the best counter service location is ABC Commissary. Now, we have eaten there many times, and I think what I like about it is, first of all, there's a huge seating area, so they can swallow a lot of people, so it's not hard to get a table. But I also think they have a lot of interesting items on the menu. It isn't just burgers and fries. I mean, they've got soups, salads, shrimp tacos, pork carnitas tacos. They've got plant-based burgers. They've got chicken sandwiches, chicken club, buffalo chicken grilled cheese sandwich. They've got really good side dishes, and they've got a really good kids menu there. I think that if you're going to have your basic theme park fare, there's a little bit of basic here, but there's also, much like you like the other location that had the bowls, there are things that are different here that you don't find at a normal theme park restaurant.
I agree with all of those things.
Okay.
And if I was choosing a top 3,
okay,
that would probably be number 3 for me.
Okay.
The reason that we eat there so often is that we do go when the weather is warmer.
Right.
And we like to sit in an indoor air-conditioned location, and ABC Commissary fits that bill. And for all the reasons that you just said, that is why it is a frequent stop of ours in Disney's Hollywood Studios.
Okay, so what is do you have a different number 2 then?
I do. It's a different number 2, but I also understand that it's conditional. So
Okay.
my number 2 favorite counter service restaurant is Ronto Roasters over in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge.
Okay, interesting.
The Ronto wrap sandwich is unique and it's very good.
It is good.
Now, I'll grant you, they have a very limited menu. I think they maybe have a couple of sandwiches, a couple of sides, and that's it.
They've got like a couple different wraps. I think there's a veggie wrap, and then there's a meat wrap, and there may be one other. But they are good wraps.
But I love the fact that it's very unique. You can't get that anywhere else in any of the Walt Disney World parks.
Fair.
It is specific to that location.
Very
And-
heavily Star Wars themed.
Yes, and it is outdoor eating, but it is covered and shaded. And plus, I think it's just kind of cool to sit in that Disney Galaxy's Edge marketplace area because it is full immersion. And so you've got the Star Wars characters walking around outside. You know, you have a great view from there. Plus, you have the interesting things going on inside Ronto Roasters where you have the droid that is actually
He's
roasting
churning the meat.
Yes,
That's right.
He's actually roasting the Ronto. So for me, when the weather is nice, that would be my number 2 best counter service.
That's fair, but it is also very limited seating there. They don't have a ton of seating.
Yes, you're
Now
right.
they have more than Woody's Lunchbox, And it is totally shaded there because it's just not like a tent, it's a building.
Yes, you're sitting
So it's
inside.
like a big shelter house.
Yes.
So I think we do agree on the best counter service location. I'm sorry, yeah, the best counter service location in Hollywood Studios.
Yes.
Also in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, Docking Bay 7 Food and Cargo. We have been eating there since day one of Galaxy's Edge visits.
Yes.
And the menu there is really, really good. They have all kinds of interesting things. And of course, they give them Star Wars names, but essentially they're you get smoked pork ribs, fried chicken. It's the Endorian fried chicken tip yip that the boys always get. They've got roasted Endorian chicken salad. They've got beef salad.
Okay, you're making me hungry. You've got to stop reading these menus.
And there's a poke bowl there. So I think that is clearly the most interesting of the foods for a counter service restaurant. It isn't just your burgers and fries. It is way above that.
Yes, and much like Ronto Roasters, you cannot get that menu anywhere else in any of the parks in Disney. I will also say, somewhat unusual for a counter service restaurant, they serve their food on real plates/bowls with real silverware.
They used to have the really cool Star Wars silverware, the Star Wars spork, but people started stealing it. So now they just sell it in the store and they use regular good old-fashioned earth forks, spoons, and knives.
Right. But it is kind of nice to have a meal that you're using real utensils and a real plate, a knife and fork meal, not just a sandwich.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break in the middle of this, and we're going to throw in fun lounges and bars. Now, we won't be able to do this for every single theme park because not every theme park has fun lounges and bars, but Hollywood Studios does. So these are in no particular order, but they're just really good locations to have a sit, have a drink, and people watch. So I think one of them is the Baseline Tap House.
That one is a particular favorite of mine.
That's been a recent development for you.
Well, it has, because I don't frequently like to ride the Star Tours ride because it makes me a little motion sick.
Fair.
So I will often go over to the Baseline Tap House
which is right across the walkway.
Yes, which is right across the walkway. It's sort of themed on like a brew house. So they have some beers and ciders on tap, usually have some pretty interesting offerings. And then they also have some pretty good snacks, actually. They have a really nice soft pretzel, which is different than your typical Mickey pretzel that you can get at the carts, a little bit more upscale, and a few other items that are, I think, a little more adult, a little more sophisticated than your typical theme park fare. But it's a really nice place to grab, again, a cider or a microbrew and just sit and people watch. They do have a couple of tables on the inside, but most of the seating is outside. But again, it's nicely shaded. And
so once again, the caveat, it can be warm. But even when it's warm, there seems to be enough shade there that it's not too bad. And if there's a breeze, it's a nice place to sit.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think another really cool lounge/bar at Hollywood Studios is the Brown Derby Lounge. I don't think a lot of people realize this exists. It's on the outside of the building. It's pretty narrow and it's not a big location, but it's basically a wine bar, if I understand this correctly.
I've also been there before, and I agree with you. It's definitely a little bit of a hidden location, right next to the Brown Derby, really sort of parallel to the walkway that goes between Sunset Boulevard and the main hub area.
Going towards the Chinese Theater.
Yes.
They do have all kinds of appetizers there, too. They've got Cobb salad, a charcuterie board, shrimp cocktail, crab louis. So they have all kinds of snacks. But I guess, they've got some other entrees, too. They've got some sliders, shepherd's pie. They have more food there than I thought they did. You can even have a steak there.
I wonder if they have a limited menu from the Brown Derby restaurant.
They do. But yeah, I think their purported claim to fame is being sort of a wine bar.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's a nice location, and it's one you might want to check out. Again, it's outdoors, but this is a very heavily shaded walkway. There are a lot of trees, and it's kind of a quiet spot, believe it or not, considering I think the Tap House may be a little louder just because of its location to Galaxy's Edge, but I think this one's very quiet and very laid back.
Yes, it is.
Okay, and this is the other fun lounge bar in Hollywood Studios, and I think this comes as no surprise. It's Oga's Cantina in Galaxy's Edge. Now, you got to have a reservation to get into this place, and it isn't cheap, and it's very small. So you may not always get a table, but it's something you need to do at least once, especially if you're a Star Wars fan, because it's not themed to the cantina from Tatooine, but it's still themed Star Wars cantina type stuff. And they've got really cool drinks in there that have, of course, cool Star Wars names, but they're really neat.
Right. Aside from interesting flavors, they have some kind of interesting elements to them. So, for example, if you've ever seen one of those cocktails that seems to be steaming because it's got dry ice involved, they have that kind of a cocktail. They have cocktails that have some elements that cause it to bubble like a cauldron. And they have some that have other interesting look and features. In fact, one of my favorites there has a foam that causes your lips to be numb.
The fuzzy tauntaun.
The fuzzy tauntaun.
I love the fuzzy tauntaun.
Yeah, it's really unique and fun, aside from the interesting environment. The only downside to this place is that because it is so popular, they have stand-up tables in addition to sit-down tables, and you can't choose what you get. If you're lucky enough to get a sit-down table, you're probably not going to be there by yourself because they will seat up every table.
Unless you're there with a large group, yes. We've had a group before, and we usually end up sitting with other people because it's like tables for like 8.
Yes.
The big tables.
But typically you're so happy to get a table that you don't mind.
Right.
We've also been seated at the stand-up table before. And unfortunately, after a day of walking at Disney, the last thing you want to do is stand for another 45 minutes while you have a cocktail. But I will say the atmosphere there is so much fun that you kind of don't mind.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they've got some great names. The Fuzzy Tauntaun, the Bespin Fizz, the Dagobah Slug Slinger, the Jedi Mind Trick.
Yep.
I mean, so this is definitely someplace to check out. All right. So we're going to move on to the worst sit-down restaurants in Disney Hollywood Studios. My number 2, and this may be a little controversial. I don't know. We'll see. Rodeo Roundup Barbecue. It is the new sit-down place in the Toy Story Land. And I've got to say, it's family style. And that isn't my problem. The problem is it's just sort of so-so food, in my opinion. The ribs were fine. The chicken was fine. And it was just sort of bland and not really inventive or anything new. And it was pretty expensive. And we had a really long wait to get in there. Now, to be fair, we went there right after it opened. So it was bound to have a long wait. I mean, if your kid's a Toy Story fan, you're going to have a hard time avoiding this. Because they do the thing, when Andy shows up, everybody has to stand still and not move until Andy walks by. But I thought it was just kind of bland. I don't know. What's your take? Do you have a different opinion?
I would say it's not my second worst. I'll agree with everything that you said about that place. It was expensive for what it was. I thought the food was actually a little better than okay.
Yeah, maybe.
And the thing is, there are so few sit-down dining options in Disney's Hollywood Studios that...
Right, especially someplace where a kid would have fun.
And I will say it is nice to have a sit-down restaurant that's not Italian or that isn't steak.
No, I mean,
So I like the barbecue aspect of the menu. And I will also say that I felt like their take on some of the desserts and side items was maybe a little bit different than standard, but just a notch above standard. I mean, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of family style restaurants in Disney World. And if you're looking for just a family style restaurant, we will suggest better family style restaurants in later editions of Park Bites.
Boy.
All right, so I'll tell you my take on my second worst sit-down restaurant, and this will also be controversial.
Okay.
I'm going against the grain here with a lot of my opinions today. I'm going to say 50s Primetime Cafe.
Wow.
I know people that absolutely love that place.
Yes.
Love it. It is their number one choice. I have to say, the couple of times that I have been there, it's been annoying, and I thought the food was really heavy.
Okay, that's fair.
So
We've been there twice.
Yes. So for those that don't know, it is supposed to be themed like a 1950s kitchen. And they serve home style foods. So meatloaf, pot roast, what you would expect.
Fried chicken, mashed potatoes.
And the shtick there is that the waiters and waitresses act like they are your uncle or cousin, and it's supposed to be a family style setting, and they sort of good naturedly rib you about, cleaning your plate.
Elbows off the table.
Make
you stand in the corner.
Yeah. That sort of fun stuff. The first time we went, I'd say we had a pretty decent experience.
We had a pretty good waitress that time, as I recall.
Had a pretty good waitress. It was fun if you're into that kind of thing.
You order your dessert off of Viewmaster.
Yep.
And there's little TVs at the table that play 1950s clips of TV shows.
So I felt like it was a pretty good experience. The second time we went, we had none of the fun. We
had a waiter, and he was not playing it at all.
No, not at all. So I felt like I was eating in a Cracker Barrel. I mean, when you don't have the fun interaction with your wait staff, then all you have left is the menu and
the Formica
countertops. So I felt like I was eating in a Cracker Barrel, and it was a dud experience.
Okay.
So if they can't promise consistent interaction with your wait staff, then I am gonna rank that way at the bottom, because if you're gonna have a restaurant that is based on how the wait staff interacts with the public, then if you're not going to deliver on that, then you're at the bottom.
All right. Well, that's fair. Fair. Okay. I think we do agree on the number one worst sit down. And once again, we're going to be giving a big fat black eye to an Italian menu. Mama Melrose Ristorante Italiano. It is El Awful O.
I feel like this restaurant has never really found their way. Unfortunately, It's all the way back, kind of behind Muppet Vision. It's not very visible.
Everything else around it is closed now.
Yeah, everything around it is closed. So you really have to find your way there.
And you really have to want to go there.
And I feel like the restaurant itself has kind of taken on the personality of being the forgotten, outsider. The couple of times that we've been there, the food has been okay to less than okay.
I think it's less than Olive Garden quality for the most part.
The wait staff has been fine, but there is just nothing interesting either about the menu or the atmosphere of the restaurant.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say that there is really nothing special or particularly Disney about it.
Yeah, it's just a really substandard Italian restaurant. It was originally intended to be, I believe, a Muppet-themed restaurant back when that was going to be a Muppet area. But they settled on this Italian place, and even when it was a heavily populated location with a lot of active stores and shops around it, the food was never good.
Yeah.
And now the food is still not good, and you've got to go out of your way to get to it. So if you're looking for Italian cuisine, not here. There are much better locations that we'll cover on other Park Bites. So I would say avoid Mama Melrose's. So we're going to end this show on a positive note, because we always like to try to do that. These are the best sit-down locations in Hollywood studios, and I think we both agree on these.
Yes, 100%.
All right, so number two, and I struggled with putting this at number two because I think it deserves a number one, but I didn't give it the number one just because the food quality is not quite as good as our number one.
Fair.
Our number two location, the Sci-Fi Dine-In Theater.
It's such a fun atmosphere. If you're not familiar with Sci-Fi Dine-In, when you walk inside this restaurant, it looks like you are at an outdoor drive-in movie theater.
We love the inside-outside.
We love the inside-outside. So it has a huge movie screen, just like you would have at an outdoor drive-in theater. And one of the most fun elements is you sit in booths that look like 1950s cars, complete with headlights, windshield, and car-type seats. So you sit in these 1950s cars
booth
facing the screen, and they show a rotating sort of mashup of 1950s B-movie trailers and old-fashioned drive-in movie theater ads.
Right. And sometimes the staff really gets into it and they will sing along and participate with what's going on the screen. Like on the screen, we'll say something and then they'll scream the answer. The food here is pretty decent. It's you know, at the end of the day, it's burgers, sandwiches, and salads, but it's done in such a creative way. Like I said before, if you're looking for a hamburger, get it at a place like this because you won't notice the fact that you're eating a hamburger because you're surrounded by all this fun stuff.
Back in the day when the restaurant opened, all of the waiters and waitresses were on roller skates.
Yep, and you had free popcorn they handed out. That's
right. They handed out little baskets of movie theater popcorn as you were perusing your menu, and that was a little fun element too. They've discontinued both of those, although occasionally I will still see a waiter or waitress wearing roller skates.
It was probably a safety issue, I imagine.
Oh, I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was a
There
nightmare.
were probably many spilled plates.
But I will say the atmosphere of the restaurant itself is very unique and very fun, and I enjoy myself every time I go there.
Yeah, that was the very first sit-down restaurant we ever ate at in a Disney World park when we were there on our honeymoon.
That's right.
So I guess maybe this has a bit of a sentimental place in our hearts, but don't be swayed by that. It's still a lot of fun. All right, number one, I think without question, for Hollywood Studios is the Hollywood Brown Derby. If you're looking for a really nice sit-down meal with a very nice menu, and you want to have, you know, a big steak, or you want to have a big chicken dish, or just really fancy prepared food, Hollywood Brown Derby is the way to go.
Agreed. I mean, it is early Hollywood elegance all the way. White tablecloths, waiters that are dressed up with bow ties and vests.
They had the caricature photographs all around the place of, you know, Hollywood elite and Hollywood stars from back in the day.
Right. And because it is in a theme park, you can wear shorts and a t-shirt when you're eating in there.
And they're serving you in a tuxedo.
That's right. That's right. So it's a little bit of a weird mashup there.
But the food is really good.
The food is really good. I've never had a bad meal there.
But it is expensive.
It is expensive. The service, though, is also top-notch. So it is a very nice treat when you are in the parks to be able to have a very top-notch sit-down experience.
Yeah, I think that it's not for everybody because not everybody wants to have a heavy, big meal in a theme park, especially if they're there in the heat. I think this would be the kind of place you would go once in a while because it is kind of expensive. But I think if you're there in the off months where it's a little cooler, like in your Februaries or, you know, your early March, it's a really nice place to go because you won't be overly hot when you get there. And having a big meal when you're overly hot is not always the best experience. But I think this is what we would call a sometimes food, but it is very, very good.
I agree.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us on our very first episode of Park Bites.
Oh, boy.
We'll see you next time.
Eating greens is a special treat. It makes long ears and great big feet, but it sure is awful stuff to eat.
Thanks so much for joining us for another episode of Mickey, Marvel, and More. And thanks to Laura for joining us in the family chat with our first installment of Park Bites.
Oh, boy.
I hope you guys learned a little bit about the food in Disney's Hollywood Studios. Now, I'm not sure if we'll continue to use that sound effect, but I stand by my work. After listening to the show, be sure to check out the show notes for links to all the stories we talked about today, as well as links to all of our socials. While you're there, if you decide you want to add to the conversation, click the link and send us an email to Mickey, Marvel, and More, all one word, @gmail.com. And hey, if we read your email on the show, you'll become an official friend of the show. You have no idea how good that looks on a resume. It may just get you your dream job. Okay, it won't get you your dream job, but that sure sounds good to say. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, my name is Mark, and this has been Mickey, Marvel, and More. If you didn't, you've been listening to Plumbing with Pete. Tune in next week when we cover what to do now that your house is full of water. We'll see you next time.